Hello, a very warm welcome to today's webinar. I'm Catherine Edwards from RIX Research and Media, and this is Joe Sieber, Assistant Headteacher and SENCo for Little Heath School in Redbridge. Little Heath is a successful special secondary school, for pupils with a wide range of needs, including moderate and severe learning difficulties and communication needs, including a number with autistic spectrum conditions. RIX has been working with Joe for a while, and in September last year, he introduced Multimedia Advocacy and RIX Wikis to the pupils and staff at the school. He has established a pilot to embed the use of RIX Wikis for education, health and care plans. And this has seen some real benefits and positive outcomes for pupils. And that's what we're focused on here today, how multimedia advocacy and RIX Wikis can be used in an education setting. Before I hand over to Joe, I'd just like to say a few words about the multimedia advocacy approach and RIX Wikis. For those of you who don't know about RIX, we are a not-for-profit research centre at the University of East London, and our mission is to transform the lives of people with learning disabilities by developing new technology. This mission has seen us undertake pioneering research for 15 years, and out of this has come our unique multimedia advocacy approach and the tools and the training to deliver it. At its heart, multimedia advocacy is about person-centred practice, and the RIX Wiki is a person-centred planning tool. It's a simple, accessible, secure, easy to build personal website. People who face challenges because of their learning or communications difficulties can use pictures, sound, words, video to develop their own multimedia portfolio with a RIX Wiki to share a really detailed picture of who they are, what's important to them, who's important to them, what do they like to do, how do they communicate, how do they like to be supported, and how do they see their future. This means that those people living and working with a child or a young person can build a clear and shared understanding of their needs and aspirations, working together to support them in achieving their goals, putting them at the centre of their plan, and most important, putting them in control. So I will hand over to Joe very shortly, who will take you through a few PowerPoint slides to share his key points with you. After that, we will try to answer as many questions as we can. Some of you have already sent through questions. Thank you very much for that. Some of you may have further questions coming out of what you see and hear today, and we'll be able to answer those later on. There is a live chat facility at the bottom of the screen, so please do use this to ask a question. Joe.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we'll load up the presentation.
Give me 2 seconds.
There we are, yeah.
There we are.
Okay, so Catherine's introduced Little Heath School. It's a secondary special school, she said. It's got a sixth form attached, so we go up to 19 at Little Heath. It's worth saying that the breadth of need is huge at Little Heath. So we go from students who are pre-verbal and have very complex needs to students whose needs are very moderate and who will sit some form of GCSE qualification. So a real range of needs, about 160 students at the school. So in the beginning, we're piloting the scheme for Redbridge as a borough. So we were approached last June to look at introducing wikis at Little Heath, and by September we'd established profiles for all of the students. That in the initial stage was just an admin task, really. That's just setting up the usernames and the passwords so that every student had a profile that they could access. But the trickier element was how we were going to make wikis part of what we did at Little Heath. We decided it was important to give it a curriculum focus. So we thought we'd make it part of the ICT curriculum for the year, which would give students a lesson each week where they could work on and develop their wikis. That seemed crucial. It's worth saying that before that, we'd had Andy and AJ come in and do training to the whole staff and introduce the wikis. And I think that was quite a powerful demonstration of what they could do. And the staff seemed quite convinced at that stage of the value of the wikis. I think what they then needed convincing of is how we could make it part of our kind of common language in school. So as I said, the curriculum focus. We also decided it was good to have a real targeted focus for the term. So we knew we had these Year 11 and sixth form EHC conversion meetings coming up, these planning meetings coming up. So we decided that we'd target these Year 11 and sixth form leavers whose meetings were coming up and work with them to develop their wikis for those meetings. That seemed to sharpen people's focus and give them a sense of a kind of a deadline and a time scale in which to put these together. And I think one of the things that was crucial was establishing with staff that this was going to be instead of, rather than in addition to other things they were doing. So this was going to become the pupil voice. Previously, we'd worked on putting together the kind of paper-based profiles and questionnaires with them, but this was going to be their pupil voice in the meeting. So I think that was important. Yeah, we then chose a template. So RIX have some templates available, and we went with this one because we felt it fit quite neatly with the Part A of the EHC plan. It seemed to cover those aspects. So I don't know whether you can see those on the screen, but those areas were my communication, my family and friends, my health and care, hobbies, my hopes for the future, and then a mystery question mark area for students to take in any direction they saw fit. That seemed a good idea, establishing a template, because it gave people a bit of a steer on the content to put on now. I think if people start with an entirely blank wiki, it can be difficult to see what's going to appear there, but I think that gave people a good steer. I'd say at that stage it's worth choosing your template wisely, because it's not going to be so easy to change those afterwards. So give some careful thought to how you want that to appear with your wikis. We began liaising with home because it was felt that unless we got parental engagement with the wikis, we were only ever going to get a small slice of who that young person was. So we started liaising with home to get information about their life outside of school, and also photos or videos that their families would be happy for us to upload onto their wikis. We also sought parental consent. If we were going to be able to share these wikis as they can be, we needed them on board in that way as well. So the autumn term continued. We came to these EHC conversion meetings, and each conversion meeting began with the student presenting their wiki. So to a lesser and greater extent, they were able to take the assorted professionals and family members through that wiki page. We had a large touchscreen whiteboard in the room, which we could adjust the height of, and that meant that students could, I'd always describe it to them saying it's like a giant iPad, and then they were away really, and they were fairly confident with that. So it also served to give the students a real role and purpose in those meetings, whereas I think previously they perhaps felt a little bit lost in that meeting with all these adults some of whom they would never have met before. We felt that these presentations were going to help support making the meetings more person-centred. They were the first thing that we did in every meeting, so it began with the wiki. I'd always emphasise that this was their meeting and they were the most important person in the room, so their wiki was the priority. And I think it did seem to set the tone in those meetings, that this was their meeting rather than a professional-led meeting. It also then established some key areas in that young person's life that would then feed into the outcomes end of the meeting. So with some of our students, that would be the extent of their participation in the meeting. They'd present their wiki and that would be enough for them, and then they'd want to return to their class or to something more familiar. But even if that was all they'd been able to contribute, that established some real key bullet points or flagged up some real areas that were going to then feed into the outcomes part of the meeting. And I think it did that quite successfully, really. And then moving forward, in the spring term, we spread wikis throughout the school. So all Key Stage 3 students began to develop their wikis through the curriculum. but also the wikis moved out of just an ICT focus, and we started to share with the wider staff that there were opportunities in form time, in registration time, in PHSE lessons, that where wikis would be a really good way of working with young people. We also sort of, the school's very big on taking photos. It can be a great way of capturing evidence of our students across the curriculum. And I think people began to see that wikis were a good place to store and display these. So I think that was quite successful. Okay. So moving through to the summer term, wikis now have been presented by students in all of our reviews and EHCP meetings. So I've chaired quite a significant number of meetings, and I don't think there's been a single one where there hasn't been a wiki to display and where the student hasn't been able to present that. So that's been wonderful. We're thinking forward to next year and our kind of key areas to work on. We'd quite like to try and establish the wikis as the agenda for the meeting. So at the moment, they open the meeting, and then we have an agenda that's led by, you know, a series of professionals. I think it would be nice if all of the meetings stemmed from those 6 areas I showed you on that template, so that the meeting was continually returning to this wiki and what it shared about the young person. I think also we've got further work to do on how we can collaborate and share those wikis with professionals. So our teachers and LSAs are fully on board with wikis and what they can do for our young people. And it's now starting to build that amongst the sort of extended professionals in the school, the OTs, the speech and language therapists, the physios, and seeing how they can contribute to it. So, yeah, that's where we're up to with wikis at Little Heath. Lovely.
Thanks very much, Joe. Right, we'll take this back to so that you can see Joe and me now. We've got some questions that came in earlier from a number of people, so thank you again very much for those. Probably if we start with the questions that have already come in and start to address those, and then obviously if you have anything else, any other queries, then you can use the live chat and we'll get to those as we go through as well. So Joe, if I'll take these in the order they came in, really. Yeah. Why did you think wikis would be beneficial when Andy and AJ, why did you think they would be beneficial for Little Heath?
Yeah, I think we recognised that there was a sort of bit of a deficit in our pupil voice, that we needed to find a way to capture the students' views and feelings more effectively, and also to engage with the new kind of EHC process in a really person-centred way. But I suppose with both those phrases, kind of person-centred and pupil voice, there's a danger that you're just falling back on buzzwords there. And really, at root, the kind of ethos behind those two things is about better outcomes for the young people. So I feel like I've been in meetings where, in no question, the wiki has ensured that the outcomes and the plans that we've made for their young people are more about them and less about the professionals around them. Yeah. I mean, I think we were particularly impressed by some of the personal testimonies we saw for the wikis from parents or carers who were using wikis with their child. I think that brought home to us the power of the wikis, and I think having Andy and AJ come and share with the staff was also really important. Yeah,
because you did mention to me before that perhaps the difference is around, it's not just software, it's not just virtual environment or virtual learning software, it is something that you could see that there was a difference there.
Yeah, I think
so. Is it the ownership, is it?
I think so. I mean, when we were talking previously, I was saying that I feel like I've seen a lot of kind of virtual learning environments come and go in schools that I've worked in because they've just never took hold. But I think at the outset, people could see the purpose behind these, that there was a real purpose there and that they were serving a need that was clearly there, to amplify the pupil voice. Yeah.
You have talked about the fact that obviously now more and more students are becoming involved at their annual reviews, their EHCP reviews. Were they not before? Did they want to walk out? Was it?
I mean, I think it's certainly given them a role in that meeting, whereas we would always, have an opportunity for the young person to share their views. And as I said, we had previous vehicles for doing that. But there's something about the presentation of a wiki that's quite active for the young person. Here I am up at the screen, pressing on these buttons, showing people who I am. I think maybe at a deeper level for some of our young people, perhaps thinking about some of our sixth formers in particular, it's given them a greater sense of self, really. So by following through that template and establishing that these are my hobbies, these are my health needs perhaps, but this is how I communicate, it's given them more of a sense of who they are. So I think that's been pretty special.
There was a question, I think you covered some of it in your presentation, but this obviously came in before, about do all of your pupils have wikis? And if they don't, the difference perhaps between the ones who do and the ones who are yet to develop one?
No, they all have
do,
one. Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say there's quite a lot of variability in the content on them. So some of them you click to load them up, and you can almost see them groaning under the weight of the videos and photos that the students have uploaded. They've put every experience they've had since the wikis were established in the school. For some of the students, it's far more pared down. I feel that's kind of appropriate. That's how they want to use the wikis. But I feel, obviously, where there is some more content and there is something that's more kind of led by them, the content's more led by them than it perhaps is by the staff around them, I do think that contributes more effectively when it comes to some of the key meetings we've got to have for these young people. Yeah.
How easy do they find it to share the information on a wiki? I mean, one of the aspects you mentioned was that collaboration. So is that helpful in terms of them sharing the information?
At a sort of technical level, in terms of, I mean, I think the kind of interface is very user friendly and fairly intuitive, and the team have always been open to suggestions where we've had ideas about how they could make it more so. It's admittedly, with some of our students with more complex needs, it is a challenge for them to directly produce the content on there and upload it. But yeah, with collaboration with their kind of the staff who work most closely with them, we've still been able to draw out some key information about who they are, I think. And I think by making that wiki quite alive, having videos on it, having photos on it, when it comes to sharing it, the young person can engage with it at that point. They maybe haven't uploaded that photo themselves, but they can recognise that that's them on the screen doing something new that maybe they hadn't done before, or playing, they're able to press play and play a favourite song. We had a lot of meetings with Justin Bieber and One Direction, for example. So. Don't know that put you off.
I'm thinking about not just the technical aspect, but then that joining up perhaps of putting the young person at the centre of their plan, and then other people, support professionals, home, being able to work together to support them in what they want to achieve. Yeah.
I mean, given that the majority of the content at this stage has been developed in school, so some parents have been keener and have added stuff, and we're gradually introducing them to more and more parents and getting them on board. But I think for parents, it's given them more of an insight into what happens in school, in their school life, and the achievements and experiences that they've had. I think we have instances where speech and language therapists have uploaded videos or pictures of students, following communication strategies, or we'll have videos or photos on some of them of physios or OTs demonstrating things that the young person needs to do or can do. So that's been really good. I think our experience of Wiki so far has been quite dominated by the EHC process and make it part of the annual review process as well. But wherever there's a meeting about a young person, I look for an opportunity to present the wiki and use the wiki. So we'll have meetings around, say, some of our children looked after with social workers there. That can be great because it's obviously a not uncommon experience to have a meeting where the social worker, unfortunately, hasn't had a chance to meet the young person. So this is a better way of introducing them than a piece of paper could ever do. So that's been quite good for joining out. I think I mentioned that for us, one of the kind of areas for development is getting more input from the wider professionals to build this wiki and add to it, and also doing more sharing with the professionals, giving them more access to it. But already beginning to see the kind of green shoots of that. Yeah.
And also the home partnership. I think you said that's something that again is perhaps next steps.
Yeah. Yes. I think one of the things that I've discussed with Andy is having a parents and carers event at the school to share the wikis, because that's something that perhaps in hindsight would have been good to do back in September, but you live and learn. But in some cases, we've had fantastic involvement from the parents, and we've had some students who are currently in primary schools, you know, in year 6, who are coming to us shortly, who've already started to build wikis with their parents, ready for joining us because their parents were so keen to get on board with that. So it's I think, you know, it's understandable from the parents' perspective, and I think once they see it in a meeting, they can see what this is and they can feel what this is. Up to that point, I can understand if they're a little bit unsure, and also I think some parents and carers are until they've had a chance to try it, perhaps lacking in the ICT confidence. But yeah, once they experience it, I think they realise it's fairly intuitive, fairly user-friendly.
What advice would you offer other schools? And particularly this question came in around getting the internal team on board, because at the beginning of your presentation you said, well, we introduced it. Well, there's an awful lot of work, I imagine, that goes into that.
I mean, I think as I sort of said in the presentation, we had a clear pilot group, and we had a clear focus for that pilot group, which were these meetings, which gave it a real kind of timescale and you know, a real sense of where we were heading with them. We got a few, in that sense, we got a few kind of enthusiastic, I think early adopters is the phrase, isn't it? So yes. I mean, our ICT team ICT department have been great. Perhaps, as you'd expect, they were quite enthusiastic for the new technology, but they've been really good at driving that forward. I think having them to establish some fundamentals for the wikis for all of the students was really good, because that meant when form tutors then came to it, there was some content on there and they could see how to add and develop it. I think emphasising to staff that we were going to use it instead of rather than extra, because I think everyone feels that capacity, you know, probably justifiably so. They feel like they're full really of work. So yeah, get them to recognise that this was going to come in and replace something. And be
so
better.
This isn't, it's not extra work, it's just working in a different way?
Yeah, a kind of more refined way. And then I think because the staff were then able to participate in the meeting, they could really see where this belonged in the school. And some members of staff are more kind of proactive and confident than others at this stage, but I think everyone understands, you know, why we're using them and what they can do. So I think that's been good. As I said, I think probably in hindsight, trying to get the parents and the other professionals on board right at the beginning would have been good. But yeah, it's not too late.
No, well, it's you've done a huge amount of work with WebPage.
Well, and I'd have to give a huge amount of credit to our ICT department as well. They've been real stalwarts in putting this together at Little Heath. So.
Well, those are all of the questions that had come in previously. If you will give me 2 seconds, I'm just going to get any other questions that are coming in now. Do you have parents as wiki keepers?
No, we're the wiki keepers at this stage, but that's something we've got to move to, because we've got students who are leaving us. you know, who are moving on to colleges or they're moving on to other sixth forms. So we do need to go through that process over the next sort of half term and a bit to make sure that they're wiki keepers. So they will be. But at this stage, no, we're the keepers.
So then at what point do you give the parents access, or would you give the parents access?
Well, they've got access. They've got access. So through the meetings, we share this wiki. We felt that was the good platform for showing them what it is and what it does. Yeah. And we then gave them the username and password that they needed to access and edit it at home, and gave them sort of other websites that might support them in doing that. I think with some parents and carers, they've gone away and they've done that happily. Some have pushed content our way, so that we add it with a young person, which is great. I think that works well as well. So the parents had access following each EHC annual review for their child, if that makes sense. So yeah, they were introduced to it in that meeting, and then they were given access. I think, and I mean, in some cases, we were approached by parents and carers earlier when we'd sent out the initial information about it to say, can I have access to it? And we were, you know, relaxed and happy for them to do that. I think it's helped that we've been able to put some of the initial content on there, so we can sort of almost suggest what might be best to appear on the wiki. But at the end of the day, we were sort of discussing this beforehand. Our wikis look so different, one wiki to the next. You know, one meeting to the next, we'll have a wiki that's, you know, fairly simple and fairly pared down. You know, and then we'll have a wiki that'll spark kind of uproarious laughter, and, you know, is full of videos and unusual photos, and yeah. So that's been great, and I think that's totally as it should be, really. So we tried not to be too prescriptive and too restrictive as well.
The ownership of the information that is on there is actually, it is owned by the child or the young person and their family.
Yeah, and their family, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's the end you've got to get to. They've got to become the wiki keepers, yeah, absolutely.
Another question that's come in: are wikis accessible for pupils with more complex needs?
I think, yeah, so within the kind of spectrum of ability we've got students who are happy to upload and contribute and create their wiki almost independently, really. We've then got students where very much the uploading, adding of words is staff around them who know them well, and perhaps finding creative ways to get some of the ideas and the information and the choices about that, but ultimately it's the staff member adding that to the wiki. I think the reason that I don't see that so much as an issue is because when it comes to presenting it, I feel like they can really participate in it, because it is very lively with its photos and its videos. And I think,
so even if they haven't put the information on themselves, they obviously would know that it's all about them.
Yeah. So I mean, we had a meeting just this week with a young girl who was, you know, initially quite nervous and quite, you know, I think a bit concerned about what this meeting was about, and, you know, not able to articulate that, but you could see there was some unsurety from her. She then presented her wiki, was able to recognise, blimey, that's me, and look at what I'm doing, that's fantastic. And she'd included, clearly with the staff working with us, some jokes that, you know, some images that were designed to get people laughing. And when she saw she got the reaction, she was delighted. And then we saw a whole lot more of her personality in that meeting. So that was really good. It kind of, yeah, I think it kind of unlocked her voice a bit there. So the content may end up having to be more staff-led in some cases, but then the presentation of it, I think, is where they can come into their own.
Fantastic. Well, and I would say it, I work for RIX Research, but it's the wiki has been developed in a university setting, and it's been co-developed with people with learning disabilities, with parents, with carers, with professionals. So that accessibility, depending on need, but that facility to be able to access the information, to be a self-advocate, should absolutely be there. Yeah,
I mean, I think that phrase self-advocacy is key, really. I think more and more you recognise how these young people are going to have to advocate for themselves, and you know, hopefully this is an important part of that.
Wonderful. I don't think that we have any more questions. I'll give people a couple of minutes in case there's any last minute queries. Mark, have we got anything else coming in? No. Well, rather than having people hang about, we will have the chat will be available and open for the next hour. So if there is anything else that occurs to you that you have come up or you think of, then obviously please use that. You will also be able to use the login details to access this recording for the next week or so. But thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Joe and I hope that it has been really helpful and you found the discussion has raised some issues, perhaps answered some questions, but has given you some food for thought in how RIX Wikis and multimedia advocacy might be applied in your particular education setting or within your organisation, wherever you're dialing in from. If there are any other questions, the contact details for RIX are on the website, the telephone number and the email address. And as I said, the recording for today's presentation and the question and answers will be available for the next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.